Coming up next, our final news roundup and information overload hour.
Mr. Jordan, on call readout, certainly after the first call, there were probably a half a dozen or more people that I read out. Those are people with the proper clearance and the need to know. In this case, because of the sensitivity of the call and Mr. Eisenberg told me not to speak to anybody else, I only read out, outside of the NSC, two individuals.
Two individuals.
Das Kent and one other person.
And you're not willing to tell us who that other individual is?
Mr. Chairman, point of order.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, point of order.
The gentleman will suspend. Counsel.
Mr. Chairman, I would ask you to enforce the rule with regard to the disclosure with regard to the intelligence officer.
Thank you, counsel. You know, as I indicated before, this committee will not be used to out the whistleblower. That same
Mr. Chairman, can you first stop the time so I don't lose the time?
Will persist. You are recognized again, Mr. Jordan.
Mr. Chairman, I don't see how this is outing the whistleblower. The witness has testified in his deposition that he doesn't know who the whistleblower is. You have said, even though no one believes you, you have said you don't know who the whistleblower is. So how is this outing the whistleblower to find out who this individual is?
Mr. Jordan, this is your time for questioning. You can use it any way you like, but your question should be addressed to the witness. And your question should not be addressed to trying to out the whistleblower.
Well, okay. Witnesses who aren't allowed to answer questions about who they talked to about the phone call, we get this. All based on some anonymous whistleblower, no firsthand knowledge, bias against the president. These facts have never changed. We learned these right away. Who worked with Vice President Biden, who wrote a memo the day after somebody talked to him about the call, but waited 18 days to file a complaint. 18 days to file a complaint. What did he do in those 18 days? We all know. Ran off and talked with Chairman Schiff's staff. And then hired the legal team that I just talked about. One of the steps in the whole impeachment coup, as his legal team has said. This is scary what these guys are putting our country through. It is sad, it is scary, it is wrong. And the good news is the American people see through it all. They know the facts are on the president's side. As Representative Stefanik said, 4 facts will never change. We got the transcript, which they never thought the president would release. Shows no coordination, no conditionality, no linkage. We got the 2 guys on the call, President Trump, President Zelensky, who have said nothing wrong, no pressure, no pushing here. We got the fact the Ukrainians didn't even know aid was held up at the time of the call. And most importantly, we've yet to have one witness tell us that any evidence from anyone that President Zelensky did anything on investigations to get the aid released. Those facts will never change. The facts are on the president's side. The process is certainly not. It has been the most unfair process we have ever seen, and the American people understand it. Those 63 million Americans, they understand it, and frankly, I think a lot of others do as well. They see what this for what it is, and they know this is wrong, especially wrong, just 11 months before the next election. I yield back.
All right, amazing moments from Congressman Jim Jordan from earlier today. 800-941-SEAN if you want to be a part of the program. News Roundup, Information Overload. We've got a lot of stuff breaking that we've got to get into here. Kerry Pickett, who we'll talk to in a minute, reporting for the Washington Examiner and on our website, kerrypickett.com. She had a story on Ukraine today about the non-whistleblower, hearsay whistleblower, that the guy that was identified pretty much everywhere. If you want to find it, just look it up. It's everywhere. Was close friends when he was at the White House with an official who's now a key aide to the compromised and corrupt coward, this guy, the congenital liar, for 3 years, he's been telling us Trump-Russia collusion. We have all the evidence. He had no evidence. He had nothing. So he's a congenital liar. And yet the media mob just falls into this, hook, line, and sinker just because they hate the president so much. Anyway, they were close friends at the White House. And this guy now works for Adam Schiff. And the guy was the director for the Gulf states at the NSC. at exactly the same time that the alleged hearsay whistleblower, non-whistleblower, was Ukraine director at the NSC. And anyway, so we're getting more connections now as it relates to the whistleblower and Adam Schiff's office. Because you know what? We're not getting those answers. So when Adam Schiff, the congenital liar, first said, no, we'd like to talk to the whistleblower, he was lying through his teeth. Then he got caught lying through his teeth. Oh, I should have said something. Oh, okay. And he didn't. Anyway, Kerry Pickett is with us, as well as Tom Fitton, who's the president of Judicial Watch. Kerry, let's start with your breaking news.
That's right, Sean. I mean, as you just mentioned there, Schiff, he initially denied he had any knowledge about the whistleblower complaint prior to its filing around mid-August. And he said around September 17th that we have not spoken directly with the whistleblower, but we'd like to. But then it was later found out that his statement was false and that a member of his staff had spoken to the whistleblower before the complaint was filed. So he looked kind of stupid. So now what we are finding out was that the alleged whistleblower and this staffer of Adam Schiff, they had worked together over at the National Security Council during the Trump administration. And it wasn't just that they had worked together. They were buddies. They were really good friends, according to a National Security Council staffer. And, you know, they hung out together. They went to lunch together. They palled around. They were described as bro-like. Now, it wasn't just that they were good buddies. They also had really antagonistic attitudes towards the Trump administration. And that tended to be a very bad problem because the alleged whistleblower seemed to have some leaking problems, as well as Adam Schiff's staffer, because he was accused of leaking very often to the press bad stuff to the press. So they had a lot of issues as far as being antagonistic to the Trump administration.
Tom Fitton, as we watch this and we stand by, I mean, you see all the parallels and everything, including the Russia witch hunt, which went on for 2.5 years. The amazing thing is what I keep talking about, this bifurcation of people's brains where, you know, you have to, you know, care about Russian election interference, but you'll ignore the dirty dossier and you'll just go along with a conspiracy theory and a hoax that is, well, according to Attorney General Barr, I think this is about to blow wide open. And it's going to hit these people so hard, their mothers will feel the vibration.
Yeah, that's what this coup is about, Sean, which is to protect those who were implicated in the criminal misconduct against the president. You know, the Justice Department has confirmed, the media doesn't want to talk about this, but there's confirmation that there's evidence of criminal misconduct in the opening of the investigation into President Trump. And so it further bolsters, frankly, the president's inquiries with Ukraine as to what was going on here. And he was entirely appropriate to ask these questions. And who cares what people like Mr. Vindman think? Who cares what Ambassador Yovanovitch thinks? They didn't care about corruption in the broad sense of the word. They had this narrow view of corruption, and any corruption that it's interesting, any corruption that involved the Democrats or Obama or the typical deep staters, they weren't terribly interested in that. But they, as you point out, Lieutenant Colonel Vindman went running to at least 3 people he shouldn't have talked to about this classified material, this phone call with the president. After his lawyer said, don't talk to your boss, he went and talked to 3 people about it. So you've got some legalities here that people like Vindman and the leaker have to deal with, and frankly, Mr. Schiff have to deal with, because laundering this classified information doesn't make it legal just because you call it a whistleblower complaint.
Well, it's pretty unbelievable. And by the way, there are two now Adam Schiff staffers that work with the hearsay whistleblower, Kerry Pickett, because you wrote about that also. So it's not just one, there's 2. And I got to imagine there was extensive contact. Now, Schiff's office said, well, the whistleblower's attorney has gotten in touch with us and he's looking for ways to testify. Well, how are they going to let that person testify? What are they going to do? Put him in shadows on a closed-circuit TV from some undisclosed location?
I have a very tough time thinking that the Democrats are going to even want to allow that this alleged whistleblower is even going to be put up on the stand anywhere or anywhere in these hearings. They seem pretty adamant that they're not going to allow this alleged whistleblower to testify. And the only way it's ever going to happen is if there's a Senate trial. But I will say this, though. What's interesting here is that you have these whistleblower, or rather this alleged whistleblower. Every single former NSC staffer that I have spoken to, every single encounter that they have had with this alleged whistleblower has always been hostile. Anytime they have spoken to this person, it's always been, this person hated me. This person was a snake. This person always was up to something. Nobody liked this alleged whistleblower. It was always the same pattern, as if there was some sort of operation going on. This alleged whistleblower seemed like he was actually gathering information. And that's, by the way, how Adam Schiff's staffer was just described to me by this latest former NSC person. Said it seemed like he was asking questions about me and that he was digging up dirt on me. It seemed like the only reason why he was there was just to dig up dirt. And
so where does this go from here? Tom Fitton, I guess at some point you're probably already making your list of Freedom of Information Act requests for all the corruption that took place here, but that's a year from now that we'll have you back on. And, remember Tom Fitton filed that a year ago, and he announced it on the program. And when we now have a date for Michael Horowitz to go before Lindsey Graham's committee. That's December the 11th. So we're going to get the FISA report. That's coming out. Then you've got the Attorney General Barr giving what I thought was the most unbelievable speech ever by an attorney general, as he talked about, how he loves our constitutional institution and how unfortunate it is that we have now seen a steady encroachment on presidential authority, and goes into what the framers and our founders believed, and then goes into a very, very, very profound diatribe, even if you want to call it that, is how they have tried to destroy this president. And he's describing the people in the highest, when he talks about the resistance, the fact of the matter is that the waging the scorched earth, no holds barred war of resistance against this administration. It is the left that is enraged in the systematic shedding of norms and undermining the rule of law. And I was pretty profound to me.
Yeah, and you kind of see this in the desperate attacks on the presidency through this coup process, where they're suggesting the president doesn't have a right to hire and fire ambassadors, remove them from positions, doesn't have a right to set policy. The deep state should be setting the policy. Lieutenant Colonel Vindman can go to the president of Ukraine and essentially countermand the president of the United States. And this is something that whether or not he's ultimately impeached, and I don't even think that's for sure, given the weakness of these hearings, it damages the republic, because what the new standard is that if you're a president who's elected, that if the opposite party runs the House, they can impeach you for jaywalking or doing nothing inappropriate at all in the case of President Trump here. So it's a real damage to our Republican form of government, and the Attorney General placed it in a broader historical context that it involves the deep state, involves the judiciary, and it involves Congress, and the Constitution and the people's right to govern themselves by electing the president and allowing him to do his job is being undermined.
All right, quick break. More with Kerry Pickett, more with Tom Fitton on the other side. 800-941-SEAN if you want to be a part of the program. We'll get to your calls coming up next half hour. An amazing Hannity tonight. We're going to rip this thing apart. It was a disaster today. And on top of being a national disgrace, 9 Eastern on Fox.
Coming up next, the 600 station man, Sean Hannity, now reaching over 20 million listeners every